Before starting the tutorial, make sure to download the assets found in the video description. We will be using these assets throughout the tutorial. Hello and welcome to my Premiere Pro Basics course. This course is for beginners, so if you're just picking up Premiere Pro for the first time, this course is for you. In our first episode, we're going to talk about setting up your workspace. So once you have installed Premiere Pro, go ahead and open it up. This screen should come up. So we're going to go ahead and click New Project. And we're going to come up with a name for our project. I like to give it a name and a date so I remember what I created and when I created it. Now you can actually choose the location of your project file. So I'm going to click Browse. And I'm going to just put it on my desktop here. Press Choose. You can leave all the rest of the settings the same. We don't have to worry about that for now. Now press OK. Now we're going to focus on Workspaces. Go into Window, Workspaces, and make sure that the Editing Workspace is selected. You are actually able to create your own custom workspace exactly the way you want it. We're going to create a workspace that I like to use, and you can choose whether you want to keep it or not. So I'm going to just go ahead and delete a few things. I'm going to delete metadata, audio clip mixer, close panel. I'm going to go in here. I don't need media browser. Just click the tab and close panel. We're just closing a few different ones here that we don't need. We need effects. I'm going to close markers. I'm going to close history. And now I'm going to open a few things here. So under Window, you want to hit Lumetri Color. And that should pop up in the side here. And we're going to hit Window and Lumetri Scopes. That's going to come up here. Now, let's just rearrange the workspace a little bit. I find that this monitor is a bit too big, so we're going to just move it over like this. We're going to give the audio meters a little more room. And I'm happy the way this looks. And we're going to actually save this workspace. So go into Window, Workspaces, and Save as New Workspace. I'm just going to call it Custom Workspace. Press OK. And the magic of creating your own workspace is that no matter how much you change it up, so let's say we arrange things and you kind of it gets all messed up and you're like, you know what? I just want what I had before. This is a big mess. So what you would do is you would go into Window, Workspaces, and you want to reset to save layout. When you do that, this is the original layout that you saved. And this is a great way to just have your workspace exactly the way you want it and to easily revert back to it when you need to. Now, why don't we import some footage? There are a couple of ways you could do this. First way, you go to File, Import, and then you find your footage. So I'm going to go ahead, find it, footage, and I'm just going to import these clips here. Press Import. And there they are right in your project bin. So that's one way of doing it. Let's see some other ways. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, and you can do this by selecting each one and hitting the delete button, or I click one, I hold shift and I drag all three of them and I hit delete. So let's try another way. If we open up another window here and we look for media browser, this is another way of looking at your footage, and I'm just going to open this up a bit so you can see it. And we're going to go ahead and find our footage. Okay, here are the clips. I'm going to select them all, right click, import. And if I go back to the project bin, you'll see that the same files uploaded. So that's the second way of doing it. Now I'm going to show you the easiest way of doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and close Media Browser. I actually don't use Media Browser too much unless I'm sorting through a lot of footage. Again, you can shift, select, or you can even just drag the clips and hit the delete button. So we're going to go ahead and import the third way, and the easiest way of doing it is finding it in your Finder. You can go ahead and drag these clips into the bin right here, or you can even drag the whole folder in. And then in here, you'll find your clips. There's a few ways of doing it. I find dragging and dropping is the easiest way. Organization is your key to success and your key to finding your files when you need to. So I'm going to show you the way that I set up my projects typically. So these folders are called bins. And the way to make them, you can hit a bin in the bottom right corner here. Or you could hit Command B and create a bin that way. I'm just going to undo that, and undo, for the record, is Command V. So we're going to make a couple of bins here. So we're going to go ahead and drag the footage we dragged in earlier into the footage bin. So I'm just going to explain what each bin has. So sequences are actual edits that we have on the timeline. So we drag them in here. Footage is all your clips, all your video clips and pictures go into here. Graphics are more like text titles, lower thirds, credits, all that jazz. Logos, usually I put in there as well. Audio is for music and voiceovers. And miscellaneous is for all the other stuff that doesn't really fit into the above categories. We're going to go ahead and create our first sequence. There's a few ways of doing this. Let's actually revert back to our save layout first, because it's a little messed up from before. Reset to save layout, and wow, we got the same layout that we set up before. Let's start off by setting up our first sequence. So the easiest way to do this is to find a video clip, look in here, drag it right into the timeline. And I can do this by clicking the clip and then dragging it right in here. And that can create a sequence for you. That's the easiest way of doing it. That's the way that I usually do it. The good thing about doing it this way is that if you have footage, a certain frame rate, like 24 frames per second, and you want to stick to that, if you drag it right in, the settings will be the same as your footage. So that's kind of the key way of doing it for me, but I'm just going to show you another way of doing it. So I'm just going to undo, and that again, that's Command Z. Command Z. So another way of doing it is clicking New Item at the bottom here and clicking Sequence. Typically, I like to go with AVC HD, 1080p, and then 1080p 24. And then you can name your sequence here. I'll just call it Sequence 1. Press OK. And that'll create a sequence for you as well. And you can drag that into the Sequences folder to keep everything organized. But again, I'd like to keep the frame rate the same as the 24 frames per second. So I'm actually going to undo this, and I'm going to just drag the clip right in and put it up in Sequences. And I'm going to call this Sequence 1. And you can do that by just double clicking the file and then typing in what you'd like to type. We can actually go into our sequence settings by clicking the file, right clicking, and going to sequence settings, and we can change things like the frame rate or even the dimensions of the clip. So 1920 by 1080 is a classic YouTube dimensions. It's what we typically use for videos. But let's say you want to create a square for Instagram. We can actually change the dimensions here. So let's make it 1080 by 1080. The ratio is 1:1. You press OK. It'll say, are you sure you want to do this? And you want to say OK. So there we've got a perfect square. And then you would want to resize the clips. We'll go through that later. So let's talk about adding footage to the timeline. Now, because I dragged that clip right in and created a sequence, our clip is already here, but let's just pretend we didn't do that and start from scratch. So we have our sequence here. And if we go under footage, there are a few different ways to put clips onto the timeline. The fastest way is to just drag it in. Drag it in. It'll drag the whole clip in. But let's say you want to only put a small part of a clip onto the timeline. You don't want to drag the whole thing and then cut it down every single time, because that's a pain in the butt. There is an easy way to do that. So if you double click a clip, it'll show up in your source monitor. In your source monitor, it's kind of like a preview bar where you can view your clip. You can adjust what points you want to import into the timeline. If you drag this little playhead here, you can scroll through the footage and you can kind of see what parts you want to include and what you don't. So let's say I just want to include up until here, right? We're going to make an out point, and you can do that by either clicking this button here or clicking O on your keyboard. I'm going to scroll the playhead to the beginning. And let's say we want to start right here. We can click Mark In, or we can click I. So marking your in and out point is I and O. And what we did here is we are marking the points where we want to incorporate on the timeline. So from here, all you have to do is drag that same clip onto the timeline. And you can see that it's shortened now. And you can see that it's just the parts that we highlighted here. If you want to zoom in and out of your timeline, you can do that by clicking the plus and negative signs on your keyboard. Or you can even just use this thingy here to adjust it. If we hit the hot air balloon clip here, and let's start around here. Mark an in point, I. And end around here, that's fine. And mark an out point, O. And we're going to go ahead and drag it on there. Another thing I should mention is that when you drag it on here from the project bin, it'll drag both the video and the audio together. But let's say you just want to drag the video. You can go into your source monitor and you can see these two options. There is drag video only and drag audio only. So if I drag the video only, it'll just show the video file. But if you drag the audio only, it'll just show the audio file. So that's just something to keep in mind for the future in case you have to do that. You can see that when footage is dragged onto the timeline, that it shows up in the program monitor. So that's the main difference between the program monitor and the source monitor. The program monitor shows what is happening in the edit, while the source monitor is kind of like a preview monitor. So that's all for today, folks. We covered setting up your workspace, custom workspaces, setting up your project, making bins, creating a sequence, importing files, and adding footage onto the timeline. In the next episode, we're going to focus on the basics of editing, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching and have an awesome day. At You Want Pizzazz, we offer one-on-one sessions for Premiere Pro. If you want to learn how to do something specific, or you just need some one-on-one help, you can trust our team to help you. Please check out our website to book your first 1-hour session.